Okay, so the lighting might be a bit better on this one. My last video, the battery was actually running though, but I wanted to make it whilst I had Wi-Fi. And I wanted to upload it at that time. So I uploaded it and then plugged it in to where there's a plug socket. This video is somewhat related. I'm covering similar issues here, but a little bit more localized to the UK. The last video on the Duchess of Sussex and her worldview, for want of a better term, was broadly about identity politics, and well, it was what it was. This obviously is closely related to that, but it's a little bit more specific. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about two cases here, both in the UK. And I'm mentioning them because I do not think these are isolated incidents. I don't think they're isolated cases, and I think it's very concerning. So, this is from the Daily Telegraph, the report by Ewan Somerville and Stephen Edgington. Nurse sues NHS for forcing racist ideology on students. Uh, Forcing racist ideology in inverted commas. This is from a few days ago. I don't see the exact date, but a few days ago. Amy Gallagher, 33, is suing the Tavistock and Portman NHS Foundation Trust, alleging discrimination on the basis of race, religion, and philosophical belief, as well as victimisation and harassment. That trust is in Devon, I believe. The mental health nurse, who is in the final stage of a 2 year course in forensic psychology at the trust, objected to a lecture titled Whiteness, a Problem of Our Time in October 2020, where attendees were forced to confront the reality of white privilege. In another race lecture the following month, Miss Gallagher claimed that she was told that Christianity is racist because it is European by a top leader. The case escalated in March this year when an external speaker at the Trust complained to the Nursing and Midwifery Council, alleging that Miss Gallagher could not work with diverse populations and had inflicted race based harm. Paul Jenkins, chief executive of the Trust, told her that it had committed itself to explicit ambition of becoming an anti racist organisation. Ms. Gallagher claims it is the first legal case for lack of belief, arguing that as a white Christian woman she cannot believe critical race theory, an ideology that says racism remains institutional and rejects a colourblind approach. They're forcing critical race theory onto people. You're not allowed to disagree with it, or they will bully you for 2 years, Ms. Gallagher told the Telegraph. I'm bringing this legal case to protect my career, but also the first test of woke ideology in the courts. The NHS is forcing someone to adopt a racist ideology and it needs to be stopped. Gallagher, who has already completed the Tavistock's Foundation psychotherapy course before embarking on the forensic course, filed court documents in the Central London County Court in March. She is represented by Andrew Storch, solicitors. Trust represented by Shakespeare Martineau intends to file its defence this week. She's already got £21,000 from crowdfunding. Um, yeah, she's raised £21,000 for crowdfunding on GoFundMe for her legal action. She's being supported by the Bad Law Project, an anti-woke group established by the actor Lawrence Fox and the campaigner Harry Miller. Harry Miller was a former policeman who was prosecuted for his views on trans issues, and he won that case. Dr. Anna Lutif, a barrister and head of legal at the Bad Law Project, said the lack of belief draws attention to something that people are not talking about in the free speech world in the West, which I think is covered by the Equality Act under lack of belief, which is you have the right not to be forced to sign up to a set of values or ideology with which you do not agree. It's quite one thing to censor somebody for wanting to say things that people find objectionable or offensive, but it's really quite another thing substantively to force somebody to articulate a view that they do not hold as if they hold it. That's what's happened to Amy. A spokesman for the Tavistock and Portman NHS Foundation Trust said, "We cannot comment on an ongoing legal case. As a trust, we have made a public commitment to work to become an anti-racist organisation." That's the report. My response to that is, as a trust, we have made a public commitment to work to become an anti-racist organisation by promoting racism. What angers me about this is how a blatantly racist argument that ethnicity is itself racist, demonizing the entire white race basically is somehow progressive. This is toxic. It's toxic. I really hope she wins the case. As for the lecture about Christianity being a racist, that's ironic because some of the world's most devout Christians can be found in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Philippines and India. There's probably more ethnic minority Christians in the world than white Christians, potentially. But I think this is actually, it gets into a whole lot of things. It gets into freedom of consciousness. It gets into how the NHS is using its resources. Now, it's one thing saying that this particular trust saying that they want to be inclusive and promote diversity. That's fine. There's a lot of staff from different backgrounds. There's a lot of patients from different backgrounds. But to actually force this vile ideology onto staff, and then bully them and harass them if they don't subscribe to it, it's appalling. And this woman has the courage to take them on because she knows that, it doesn't put her in an easy position. She's taking on basically her bosses, so she could put herself in a position where she's subject to further bullying if she wins the case. I think it's a damn disgrace. But the NHS isn't the only public body that's wasting resources promoting divisive ideologies. Civil servants have been doing this for a long time now. There's government departments that have been doing it. Government ministers are trying to rein in on it, but this is something that crosses the board. It's no secret that universities do it. Um, I think it's deeply concerning that in the year 2022, you have far left ideologues basically telling people that they should apologize for the color of their skin. That's essentially what it comes down to. I don't see any rational argument that would defend this. Why not just promote inclusivity, diversity, equal opportunity? All those things are fine without getting into this toxic idea that whiteness is inherently racist. What that is essentially saying is every white person should bow their head in shame because they're inherently bad. It's a hateful ideology, um, and I think it just demonstrates that you have woke ideologues getting into our institutions. I mean, the NHS is the country's biggest employer. I doubt this is the only trust engaging in this sort of approach. So I really hope she wins her case, but it's alarming. I think the health secretary, I'm not sure who that is at the moment, but I think they should get onto it. Um, the left talk about conservatives waging the culture wars, and they say that people like James O'Brien claim that woke is some sort of invented term by the right. But this is empirical evidence that this is happening. I mean, it's totalitarian, really, because you have ideology being forced onto people. Now, it would be quite different if you had a member of staff who were displaying open bigotry toward colleagues, and they were then put on some sort of diversity course because, as kind of a penalty for their attitude. This is a situation where you have a nurse who is basically being told that she should be ashamed of the colour of her skin. I think it's a damn disgrace. The other report I'm going to look at here, I'm not going to read out all of this because it's quite long. From the Daily Mail. Okay, it's another conservative source, but it's falling apart. Yeah, it's a Daily Mail. It's a conservative source, and you'd expect them to be anti-woke. But frankly, we need these things to be covered because if they're not, you can be sure the Guardian and the Eye aren't going to cover this. This is why a free press is so important. Anyway, Uh, yeah, I could show you this part. Did you read that? During a class debate on Black Lives Matter, Becky, 14, asked if people who weren't black could be victims of racism. In that instant, she became a pariah, bullied, beaten, and driven out of her school. Like I said, it's quite a lengthy report, but it really detailed some horrendous bullying of this teenage girl over asking a question. I'll read out the first few paragraphs of reports by Francis Hardy. I haven't named the school, and I wonder is that some sort of legal thing. They've just said it's a school in an affluent town in eastern England, so I'm not sure what the reason for that is. Anyway, the message from Becky's school, innocuous in its vagueness, made a report that there had been an incident. It was much more than that. In fact, Becky's parents discovered that their daughter had been brutally assaulted by a fellow pupil. Clumps of her hair had been pulled out. Her face and body were bruised, her lips swollen. So severe were the injuries to her legs, she was unable to walk for a fortnight. I mean, this is horrendous. But as bad as the physical battering was, its aftermath had more far reaching and pernicious consequences. Friends of Becky's 14-year-old assailant had filmed the attack on their smartphones and posted it online like some grotesque badge of honor. The next day, the vilification of Becky, which had begun 4 months earlier with taunts, harassment, and name calling within her school, was complete. A montage of photos, insults, and accusations was posted online by an unknown troll and viewed 1,400 times. Bullied, beaten, and humiliated in the supposed sanctuary of her school, a high achieving mixed comprehensive with a good Ofsted rating, Becky, also 14 now, felt under siege everywhere in the affluent town in eastern England where she lived. She did not feel she could go back to school and face her enemies. She retreated to her bedroom and withdrew from the world. She became a prisoner, says her mum, Andrea. And the reason? Becky, who is herself the daughter of second generation immigrants, had ventured an opinion in an impromptu classroom debate sparked by Black Lives Matter in July 2021 and been instantly labelled a racist. Couldn't other nationalities beside black people be victims of racism? She had asked in a spirit of genuine inquiry. And I'm not going to read out the whole thing because it's quite comprehensive, but it's shocking stuff. September 2021, in the queue for the COVID vaccination, a student told Becky, I hope the vaccine kills you. By October, Becky had started to receive a string of texts and emails from anonymous accounts. The torrent was sickening, racist little whore. And this is verbatim um, FUCKU, BITCH, your mama and your kids. Ran a few of them. Really vitriolic, horrible stuff. In terms of what the school's done about this, uh, seems precious little. But yeah, she was driven out. Now, some people might say, well, bullying's a problem. It's just run of the mill bullying. But it shows once again. I mentioned woke ideology permeates into tertiary education. It showed this is even happening now in secondary schools. I mean, the hatefulness and the bullying of the woke left. If this isn't a glaring example of it, I don't know what is. And the smugness that people like James O'Brien come out with just denies this even happens. It's lamentable. All this young girl done was ask a question. She didn't come out with any sort of white supremacist statement or anything of the sort. What the school should have done is immediately reined in on the bullies, suspended them, punished them, and made it clear that students are allowed to ask questions. But it looks like they were slow to act. I think it shows that, identity politics, this, so much for being progressive and open minded, this is actually a bullying ideology. Agree with us or else. Agree with us or else. And I think the fact that her bullies were seeing this as a green light to attack her, They're teenagers, so they are being indoctrinated by adults. They're being indoctrinated to. They probably thought, well, it's not bullying because she's a horrible little racist, so let's just we're justified in attacking her. That's what's sinister about this. That the bullies probably didn't think they were bullying. They probably thought they were doing something righteous. I mean, I've seen in the States how people get totally destroyed over false accusations. There was an incident in a high school there where some white students were falsely accused of engaging in racist language against some black girls. It turned out the girls were lying, and they had actually instigated um, the fight on a bus. Now, the school jumped over itself to denounce the racism and to denounce these white students, and they got a torrent of abuse, and all sorts of things happened. Then, when it emerged that because there was CCTV on the bus, when it emerged that actually they were the instigators, the school's attitude was let's not jump to conclusions. I absolutely abhor the hypocrisy of woke ideologues. They're not progressive. They're bullies. They're obnoxious, narrow-minded bullies who hide behind this veneer of progress. What these two cases show is we're seeing these hateful ideologies. Now, both those cases are in the UK, so this country's not immune from it. And although woke ideology is widely unpopular, we're seeing this indoctrinated at every level in education, in the NHS, in government departments. And what is so troubling about this is it's often done through the lens of progress. My point would be why can't you promote diversity? Why can't you promote inclusivity? Why can't you promote opportunity without getting into this hateful ideology of, for example, attacking white people, uh, saying that there's inherent racism with whiteness, telling children that they should be ashamed of themselves? It's just, there is a real common sense deficit going on. And what disgusts me is people who point this out, like myself, these little woke totalitarians will immediately say, oh, you're a right winger, you must be a racist. I am always wary of people who label themselves anti racists and they go around wearing that label because they're likely, not always, but they're likely to be the very sort of people who will make false smears against people, who will just weaponize the term. Now, I don't know why the school wasn't named there. I imagine there's an ongoing investigation or something, but in the report, there was very little information about what the school actually done about this. And the fact the girl had to move out showed they didn't do enough. I mean, that's going to traumatize her for years to come. That sort of bullying doesn't go away from your psyche. We're not talking about a little bit of name calling. This was physical violence. You know, too many young people have taken their own lives from bullying. But what I mean, bullying generally is bad, but in this case, it's actually come from political ideology pushed by adults. That's where it's come from. I think BLM is a toxic movement. And, it may have started off with good intentions in terms of holding the police to account for brutality, but I honestly think that it's become a pretty toxic movement. And I think any thinking person should be very wary about supporting it. I think Starmer made a very big mistake by, and so did Angela Rayner, by taking the knee. That whole taking the knee thing was, I think, misguided. The way to deal with racism in football is punish the racists, expel them from clubs, not force this ideology onto the field. Like I said, it permeates every level of society, and it's troubling. Anyway, I hope the nurse wins her case. Credit to credit to her advocates. I mean, I don't agree with everything Lord Fox comes out with. He's kind of went down the line of some out there conspiracy theories, so I don't agree with all of his positions. But thank goodness there are people prepared to stand up for common sense in regards to bad laws. We are seeing a situation where woke totalitarians are trying to weaponize legislation. Um, I mean, what's troubling about this trust is their dogma. The fact they're saying we're determined to push an anti-racist agenda, yet they're being racist. I'm very tempted to contact them and tell them what I think of them. They'll probably tell me they can't comment on an ongoing case. But what is perverse is they're saying that they're about anti-racism when they are having racist lectures, racist against white people, and we need to challenge this idea. This is one of the most important things I think when it comes to all of this. This idea that anti-white racism is somehow legitimate. It's just another form of racism. Why does it get a free pass? Because white people are the majority. Therefore, it's fine. I think it's totally toxic, and yeah, it needs to be challenged. I, for one, will never ever bow my head in an apology, or if I was in some sort of organization and I had to listen to the sort of lecture, I'd be taking a similar approach. I'd either walk out, I'd vocally voice opposition to it. Um, I'm not saying I would make a scene, but I would definitely question it. I would say, wait a second, you're telling me as an employee I should be ashamed of the color of my skin, basically. Very troubling. Let me know your thoughts.